Welcome. My name is Dr. Craig Heinsohn. I am your chiropractor in Ottawa. I'm also the host of the show, The Migraine Whisperer. So welcome. Come on in, take a seat, make yourself comfortable, get the popcorn going, because I've got a great show for you today. Now, first of all, for those of you that are here spot on time at 5, I must apologize to you. I had a major technical bleep back here. And I've kind of cobbled together the show, but it is going to happen. We're going to have a lot of fun. So welcome. If this is your first time to the Migraine Whisperer, then welcome. Do check out the previous shows. So far we're on show 6. So we've got 5 information-packed shows, packed with analogies to help you understand your migraines, and also some hands-on solutions, because this is all about providing hands-on solutions to debilitating health problems. Primarily migraines and headaches, just because that's the title of the show, the brand of the show. But I do cover other debilitating health problems. If you look into the channel, there are other topics there, because the overall channel is about providing hands-on solutions to upper and lower spine nerve issues. Okay, and let's get going. Enough of this silliness. Okay, so here we are. Migraines and teens is the topic of today's show. And as I mentioned earlier, it is, you see at the bottom, hands-on solutions to debilitating health problems. And you see from the intro there, I give you a hands-on solution straight away. That is an occipital muscle release, which is here at the back of the head. That's something you can do. The full video with more details, more nuances on is on the channel. So just go down below at the end of this live stream. If you're watching, do shout out. If you're watching live, put a comment in, ask me a question. I love those questions. I love those comments. And if you're on the replay, then then put a comment in at the bottom, and I will circle back around a little later. Okay, so what are we getting up to on this show? So, in fact, let me just rewind slightly. So the reason I put together this show is I realized I had 3 or 4 teenagers in my office who had come in the last 2 or 3 months, who had primarily come in for migraines and had seen a major change in that condition. Okay, so I'm not really here to talk about conditions as such. I want to talk to you about the principles. Okay, so prevalence of migraines. So today we're going to talk about the prevalence of migraines by age. Okay, obviously relevant if we're talking about the teenage factor. We're going to talk about the prevalence overall as well, because there's some interesting stuff that comes out in the studies. Typical stressors for teens in particular. Migraine disguises, so that you, if you're a parent watching, or if you're a teen watching and you want to advise your parents why and how you believe you've got migraines, then I want to discuss some of the disguises migraines can show up in, and then what to do. So right at the end there, I'm going to give you some hints and tips what to do, that hands-on stuff that we talked about. And we'll get going from there, okay? So I'm going to actually start off with one of the teens. She's just turned 20, but she was a teenager when she first started with me. Okay, here we go. Hi there, everyone. Hi, it is Dr. Craig here, and I am super excited to be able to bring in Ella. And Ella has been a practice member at the office for probably around about a year now. And she's lucky that she discovered chiropractic before she came to us. And the type of chiropractic we do in the office is very specific on the upper neck. I'm going to let her explain what's happened. So Ella, so really just to start with, so when did you first realize that you were having, in your case it was headaches, which is obviously on the scale of migraine headaches, but when did you first notice that you were having headaches?
Probably when I was 17, 18 years old.
Right. What was driving it, do you think?
I think stress in school.
About how many headaches were you having? How frequent were they and how intense were they? Tell us a little bit about that.
Almost every other day.
Okay, so you're having like a couple of headaches, or like three to 4 headaches a week.
Yeah.
And how long would they last?
If I didn't take Advil, it would probably last all day.
Okay, and if you took some painkillers, would it kind of reduce the frequency of the headaches?
No.
Okay, so just tell us a little bit about your story then.
Well, I was getting headaches probably every other day. It would bother me probably all day until I fell asleep.
That was before you discovered chiropractic. So tell us a little bit about your journey then.
Well, when I came to this office, the headaches were probably gone within like less than a month.
Really? That quickly? So with no Advil, you got to the situation where you weren't having any headaches at all.
Hmm.
And do you think there's anything else going on that may have contributed to that? And I mean, obviously, and most of the viewers know what I feel about chiropractic care and how it can help, but there could have been other things, anything else that may have been helping.
Honestly, I don't think if anything, it could have added to more headaches. I was like on a gap year, I was stressed about needing a job, anything like that.
Right?
So without the chiropractic care, I think I probably would have gotten more headaches.
And we talked about this earlier, but you've also got lots of friends that have had headaches over the years. And did you ever have any friends that had headaches like going back like until they were like early teens, maybe even younger than that?
Yeah, my best friend's little brother, her family all gets migraines like quite often.
Right?
And her brother has gotten migraines since he was probably like 9 or 10.
Oh, really? Right. That's full on migraines. Now, what signs or what signs did you? I mean, you are older. You were 17, so you could say to your folks, I've got headaches, but the younger kids perhaps couldn't articulate. So, what signs do parents have that their kids could be having headaches or migraines?
With Laurel, she had a migraine last week at school. She was like, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. And then she had gone home and she was like almost like debilitated on her floor. She couldn't move.
Right. Wow. So you get her into the office. That was last week.
Yeah.
That was literally last week. Yeah. Well, in fact, listen. Don't get her into the office. Share this show with her, or share the Migraine Whisperer playlist,
Yeah.
because there are some hints and tips that are going to help her get some good results. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently?
Honestly, I would stay with the chiropractic care more consistently.
Right. Yeah. Because
If I were,
I'm pretty strict with my care plans. Because you've been
yeah,
a chiropractor before, didn't you? And it's a little bit more as and when you were there. But I'm
yeah,
more strict. You've been to the chiropractor, but you were still with the headaches. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. And then when you came to us, we had a much more structured plan, and you started to see results. You had different results. And I'm not
yeah.
is that correct? 'Cause I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, yeah, almost completely different results.
If parents had younger kids, say like 6, 7, 8, 9, I mean, I know we're talking as teenagers, but what sort of things should they be looking out for?
With Laurel, I didn't know she was having a migraine until she had told me the next day. I just thought that she just wasn't feeling well.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
was like, "Oh, my stomach really hurts." And so I feel like parents could mistake that for just like stomach pains
All right.
instead of a kid experiencing a migraine.
Yeah. Well, and also there is also something called it's probably one end of the spectrum for migraines is an abdominal migraine, which
Yeah.
actually manifests like vomiting and those sorts of things. So that sounds like, from what you were talking about, a lot of people do vomit when they're having migraines. It sounds like that obviously exists on a sliding scale, more towards the headache, more towards the stomach issues. Right. So you've been under chiropractic care. Did you notice when you got adjusted, even though it was sporadic care, did you notice that helped at all, or just not really, just because you had
It did help,
right?
but I feel like it helps even more once you go consistently on a schedule and you commit to it.
Yeah, yeah, good, and you did. So well done, and you got the results. Woo!
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else you might have to share with the viewers before we sign out, and also like the teenage viewers? There's this stuff going on. They don't know what to do about it. They've tried everything. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I would say ask your parents to start chiropractic care as young as you can
Yeah.
because it helps tremendously. Even like regardless of migraines, just having your body be healthy and anything like that.
Right.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and
You're
I'll
so
let you get
welcome.
away. Bye.
Bye.
Right, so that was Ella last night. A huge thank you to Ella if she's watching the replay or watching live. That was phenomenal. It was relatively last minute. In fact, it was very last minute, and it was late at night. So thank you. Thanks for coming and sharing. Okay, so moving on. So typical stresses for teens. You guys are mostly, so if you've watched my previous shows, you'll see that we talk about 3 stresses. Okay, let's make myself bigger. There we go. That's the one. We'll talk about 3 stresses. So that's physical stresses, chemical stresses, and emotional stresses. Okay. So as adults, and a lot of my practice is adults. Okay, the biggest thing that everyone deals with all 3 of those types of stresses all the time. So physical stresses, trips and falls. So as a teenager, as a younger child, you're active, you're playing, you're falling out of trees, hopefully. Or perhaps you've been computer bound for a long time because you've been gaming. Okay, and then this gets us from this S shape where we have this upper curve and a lower curve, an S-shaped spine, but now you become C-shaped. Now, the problem with that is it leads to premature aging of the spine, particularly the upper neck. Okay, so that's the sort of stress that I see a lot. And obviously, since 2009, when smartphones were invented. In fact, let's rewind further. Let's talk about 1981, when you had the first personal computer come on the show, which was the ZX81 in England. In North America, you might have had different personal computers. There was the Commodore 64 that came a bit later. So people of my generation just started using computers. Prior to that was the agrarian age. Actually, sorry, you had the agrarian age where there was a lot of hunting and gathering, and you were in the fields chopping down wheat. So there's a lot of motion all the time, and a lot of motion in the neck as well. But then we got the industrial age, about the 1900s. Now we're in a factory, stood on a production line. And then, as I mentioned, the early 80s, you get the first computer. So we then got 20, 30 years of computing. So we've gone from being stood up, which isn't the best for us, but now we're sat down, which is even worse. And there's plenty of videos on my channel, which will show you tips and hints how to overcome that. And then mobile phones come in 2009, smartphones in particular. So now we're constantly in this position, which isn't healthy, because now we have gravity behind our neck. And of course, the guys that are most into tech are the teenagers. Okay, the younger kids are in them as well, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend being very careful about what tech you give your kids when they're young, because it's in the first years of life that the spine forms into this S. Between 10 months and 12 months, babies on tummy should be on the tummy looking up over the shoulder, and that actually grows the top curve of the neck. And if you're sat down, then you're losing the ability to grow that curve, and it's when the baby stands up that the third curve forms. The curve in the neck is the second curve. And but now, if we're going to sit in a gaming chair as teenagers, we've gone from this S shape to a C shape. So we're really starting to disadvantage ourselves. We're accelerating premature aging of the spine. Now, for me, I'm an expert in the top of the spine, C1, C2, C3, the occiput. Okay, and obviously, as the head comes forward, because we've trained ourselves like this, now when we look up, and I challenge this to you, so try this at home. So if you stand up nice and straight and you've got your head over your shoulders, and you can look up to the ceiling, and you get about 45 to 50 degrees of motion. But here, if I become habitual in the gaming chair, the shoulders come forward, the hips come forward, the head comes forward. Watch now. I can move about 5 degrees. I can move my head about 5 degrees. And you try that, you'll feel it just the same. You'll feel it lock up. Now, what does that mean? If you become in this habitual position, A, you've lost that motion. Okay, but B, for me, I'm afraid I haven't got my models here, but we have let me show you this. We have occiput right underneath the skull. Sorry, the back of the skull. It's called occiput, and right underneath that we have atlas. Let me show you. There it is, right at the just under the skull, that red one. So that is atlas. And if the head comes back, it rams the rear spinous down, although atlas doesn't have a spinous, but the rear part of the bone gets slammed down on the spinous of the second bone. Now, what does that mean? Running down in the middle of that ring bone is actually your spinal cord and the CSF flowing around it. So if you're jamming down on there, you're most likely putting pressure on the pressure on both the CSF flow and on the nerve system. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't do right at the beginning. Usually on these slides I have a disclaimer. Down in the description is the full disclaimer. There's two disclaimers. One is, I'm not your health provider, although I am a health provider. So this is not health advice. Okay, for you, it is purely for edutainment, entertainment, and education. And the other thing is testimonial. So anything you hear on the channel is the opinion of one person, which may or may not apply to you. To be honest, everyone is different, and we do not know. Okay, so with that, let's move on. Okay, and that's the disclaimer. Right, and if you guys remember, the disclaimer is pretty wordy. You can wind back and check it out, but quite frankly, in 10 seconds, this is it. Health advice, edutainment only. Okay, right, and right. Okay, so we're just going to go back to migraine. So we talked about physical stresses. Now, of course, chemical stresses, puberty plays a large part. So there's one of the show 4. I talk about the lazy river. So the lazy river represents flow of nerve signals around the body. Okay, forward and backwards, forward and backwards. And if we throw a bunch of rocks into the lazy river, that represents spinal imbalance and nerve system imbalance, then it's going to slow the flow. Now, the lazy river of the central CSF actually cleans the brain, provides nutrients and removes toxins. So if we're slowing down that cleaning process, then we can start to get issues. Now, no one is completely sure what causes migraines, but I have a hypothesis, and that is that's the upper cervical spine, when it's out of balance, causes a slowing effect. Now, when you add other stresses to the flow of the lazy river, so perhaps up here is rocks, but down below, like further in the river, there's a whole bunch of people that got together and they're holding the hands, that is also slowing down the flow of the water. Okay, and then perhaps a little bit further down, one of the walls has collapsed. So that is starting to slow down the flow of the water. And they represent different stresses over and above the nerve system imbalance, the physical structural imbalance. So in other words, it could be the chemistry of puberty. And then obviously with that period coming on and the menarche coming on, then there are whole changes of both the chemistry, which then is changing the physical body, which also changes the emotional body as well, as we all know. And remember, from those years when we were more spotty and more chemical and more moody than perhaps we've been for a while. And not necessarily, because we will get that cyclically all the time. Okay, so that is we talked about the physical stress, we talked about some of the aspects of chemical stresses, and then emotional stresses. So for teenagers, that would be problems online. There is an addiction problem at the moment, as you're probably more than aware, that endorphin, which is one of the main neurotransmitters, which is the pleasure neurotransmitter, is released when people hit the like button, when people share, and the person sees that, witnesses that. They did a study and they found that someone getting likes and shares and getting positive responses on their social media is equivalent to the endorphins that are produced when you win in a casino. Okay, so in other words, that activity which is reserved for over 18s, i.e. gambling, we're actually getting addicted to the same chemicals at a much younger age. Okay, so the emotions are tied into, people's responses. Are you being liked? Are you being followed? All that sort of stuff, which is a pressure that I never had at my age for sure. And then, pressure by your peers to be gaming and be in this position constantly. Okay, so we've got to guard against that. So that's typical stresses for teenagers. Now, migraine disguises, why I talk about this. So there may be things happening in a teen's life which is actually a migraine, but they don't realize it or their parents don't realize it. Vomiting. So one of the aspects of migraines, one of the what I call stressors, or what other people call triggers, is stomach upsets. One of the things that differentiate it from a regular headache is you usually have a headache, but also you have the aura. Okay, now if you have it just from one eye and one vision goes, and maybe you have the headache, maybe you don't, that is called an ocular migraine. Okay, that is called an ocular migraine. Now the prevalent theory is that it's nerves in the sheaths around the brain. The brain doesn't sense pain as such. However, the sheath around the brain has nerves inside it that are pain sensitive. That sheath's called meninges, and inside the meninges you have the CSF, and one of the stresses, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the aspects of a migraine. One of the typical things that differentiate from headaches are vomiting, okay, stomach upsets. So, but you can actually have it without the headache. So you can have vomiting and stomach upsets and think that something's wrong, something's going on. You're looking at all other things related to like digestion and allergies and those sorts of things, when actually it could be migraines. And in my experience, adjusting the top of the neck or adjusting the spine in general reduces some of those restrictions in your lazy river. And that in turn, and not just in a little way, this is actually because there have been such transitions for individuals that I've noticed in my practice. Removing those interferences can have a big effect on that symptomatology. Again, my job is not to take away symptoms, it's to remove interference to the body's ability to express itself. And obviously, blockages in the lazy river is not a good thing. So that's one of the things I do. And I've got a slide, I think, at the end that I was going to share with you guys. Right, okay, so migraine disguises. So the first one is what are called abdominal migraines. Sorry, I started talking about ocular, but the first one is abdominal migraines, and that's when the stomach is getting upset. Ocular migraines, this is something different. Now, we talked last week about aura. Okay, now ocular migraine is like an aura, but it's also called a retinal migraine. So there's a little bit of confusion. The modern name is retinal migraine. What that means is one of the eyes actually loses vision when you have a migraine, and you'll see an aura, but it's only out of one eye. Okay, whereas the regular aura is out of two. Okay, and the other migraine that could come in disguise is dizziness. Okay, so dizziness with no headache. Okay, that could be a vestibular migraine. Okay, vestibular being of the ear. Okay, so teens suffering from that sort of condition and could be having a variety of symptoms. They prevent them going to school, which in turn that has an effect, knock-on effect, preventing parents going to work, because now they have to look after their teen, especially if it's a younger teen. Okay, especially if it's a child as well, under a teenage age. So as a parent, being conscious of that, being able to realize that A is going to help your child recover a lot quicker, and B, it's obviously going to save you time at work. Okay, and then part 4, what to do. Now, to start with, I've mentioned this earlier in the earlier shows, but really important, keep a journal. Okay, it may be very sporadic. It may link in with monthly cycles. It may link in with stress at school. So if the teenager is keeping a journal of frequency and how long the migraine or headaches lasting and what sort of symptoms they're getting, or the stomach pain, or the dizziness, if it's a potential vestibular migraine, then you're going to have a great way to rule things out. Okay, so for example, you could change the food, remove. There's loads of material on the internet of types of food that additional stresses for migraine sufferers. Things like cheeses and beans and those sorts of things that have particular chemicals that stress a migraine further. So you can cut those out, you can record it, and then when you look back, if you're still getting the same frequency, the same intensity, then you know it's not that, okay? But if the frequency seems to reduce and the intensity seems to reduce, then that is awesome. So that journal in and of itself is going to help you address some of the chemical problems and some of the stresses, some of the physical problems. So perhaps if, like my daughter, when she would go speed skating, just training, I thought it was just innocent, but she would actually have very high anxiety levels, which was surprising to me because it wasn't a competition. But obviously everyone's different. So it could have been that would try to trigger migraines for her. It didn't. She wasn't a migraine sufferer, but that was definitely a stressor for her. And maybe if she wasn't under chiropractic care since she was 3 days old, maybe it would have been a chemical stressor that set off migraines. We'll never know. Okay, and then obviously the other thing to do is to get your teen checked by a chiropractor that is proficient in checking the upper spine. It doesn't really matter what technique you use, as long as they know how to check and adjust atlas, which is the top bone, C1 and C2. And I've produced an entire video. If I get a chance, I will. In fact, I'll put it at the end. I'll put that one at the end, which is called "How to Find Yourself a Migraine Chiropractor." Okay, really, it's how to find yourself a chiropractor that's proficient in adjusting the upper spine. So chiropractors don't really call themselves migraine chiropractors usually, except for myself. I call myself the Migraine Whisperer. So, but that will help you find a chiropractor wherever it is in the world. Now, if at the end you have an issue with that, all right, let's pop myself up here. Yeah, so if at the end you've searched, you've looked around, you're not quite sure what you're looking for, you made a good search, and you've watched the video and just followed the instructions because it's pretty self-explanatory, and you're still having trouble finding yourself someone that you feel could deal with your children's migraines or your own migraines, then do reach out. Send me an email where you are, and I will see who I can find. All right, and if you're in the Ottawa area, go on down below into the description. I've got a couple of gifts for you, and actually, if you're outside of the Ottawa area, go down below. I've got a gift for you, 2 gifts actually, for those out of area. Now, right, I hope you've enjoyed that. Now, next week we are talking about men and migraines. Okay, so they are the majority. They are the minority of migraine sufferers, but they are a large minority. Okay, so 30% of men suffer with migraines. I've got a couple in the office. They're going to come in, and hopefully I'll be able to put some clips of them getting adjusted. One of the most significant adjustments that I use is called it's called an occipital lift. So let's see. Okay, so that was the occipital lift. Now that is one of the main ways to remove those rocks, those boulders, those log jams from that lazy river, the CSF, but also taking pressure off the nerves that come out of the neck, go back into the brain. So there's a relationship between the brain stem and the structure at the top of the neck. Okay, I hope that was of interest. Come back and join us next Tuesday, 5 p.m. We're going to have some more stuff going on. Throw a comment in if you are on the replay. Welcome. Put a comment in, and I do circle back. So, what your teenagers, have they had any symptoms over and above the ones that I've mentioned that you feel might be linked to upper neck issues and migraines, do throw them in and let me know your experience. Put it down below. I do circle back around. I do use your comments. So thanks a lot. Have a great week. Have a great month. Now, as always, let's keep you doing what you love for longer. Okay? And right, and with that, this is Dr. Craig. Over and out.